In last week's video, I showed you how you can use a macro to help optimize a DOS program. Macros are a pretty standard way to do that. They're similar to inline functions, but the macro is a great way to replace, a simple one-line function, because just sometimes you need to do a macro instead of an inline function. Now, macros are great, but you do need to be careful. So let's look at an example where things break when we use macros. So we're going to write a simple function that's going to count from 1 to 10. It's going to compare that number with the number 5. And it's going to print whichever number is larger, and that is the max program. So I'm going to go and do fed max.c. So I'm using the fed editor here. We include that in FreeDOS 1.3. I like using fed because it adds color to my code, and I just think it makes things a little bit easier to read. All right, so let's first do it with the safe way. So the safe way to write this program is with a function. But first, of course, I need to have include standard.io.h. And we're going to do a function here called max. It'll be an integer function called max, and we'll do two arguments, int a and int b. And we're going to do just a very simple comparison. If a is greater than b, then return the value a. Otherwise, or else, return the value of b. Okay, pretty straightforward comparison there. And then we're going to use it in our program this way. So we'll do an int main function. And we'll do our int variable called value. And that's going to be some value in the middle. We'll just pick 5. And then, of course, we need our counter variable. So int count. And then we're going to do a for loop. I think for loop's the way to do this. We'll do a for count equals 1, and then count less than or equal to 10. And so this way it'll count from 1 to 10. And then at the end of every iteration, it will increment the count variable by 1. So we'll do count plus plus. And then for each iteration, we'll do printf, and then we'll say the maximum value is whatever the maximum value is. %d is an integer. All right, so now we're going to call the max function. So we'll do max, and then our count variable, and then the value. And that's what we're going to do for our loop. And return back the operating system. All right, so when we run that, the program should count from 1 to 10. And it's going to print the maximum value. So let's go ahead and save our program. So save and quit. And we'll use i16gcc. We'll save that out to max.exe. And there's our max.c program. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. So again, the program will count from 1 to 10 and compare each of those numbers with the value 5. So from 1 to 5, it should always be 5, right? Because the maximum of like 1 and 5 is always 5. But from 6 to 10, well, those numbers will be bigger than 5. So that should be counting from 6 to 10. So let's go ahead and run that. So we'll do max. And there we go. So the first 5 lines are where it's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, the maximum value is going to be 5, and it compares it to 5. And then after that, from 6 to 10, it's always going to be 6 to 10. All right, now let's be a really clever programmer. We're going to update the max program. So we'll do fed max.c. So you don't actually have to do this with a for loop. Now, I'm going to say that I think for is a great loop, and that's definitely the right way to solve this problem. But let's see what happens if we rewrite it as a while loop. So I'm going to get rid of this for condition right up here. I'm going to say we need to initialize count at 1. And then we're going to say, while the count is less than or equal to 10, then do this loop. Now, somewhere in there, we need to increment the count variable. So, okay, well, I can do that. If I do count plus plus, then the max function will use the value of count. And then when it's done, it will increment count by 1. That's what that means. We're going to use the value first, and then it's going to increment 1 to it. And that's still valid, right? We can start the count at 1, and then as long as the count is less than or equal to 10, we're going to do the loop. And it's the same as the for loop, and it's doing the same thing, right? So we'll go ahead and save this. and we'll recompile our program. And let's go ahead and run it. So we'll do max. And it's the same output that we had before, right? So from 1 to 5, the maximum value is 5. And then from 6 to 10, the maximum value is 6 to 10. All right, so that's good. But now let's be really clever. We're going to be so clever, we're going to break it. So the max function is pretty simple. Let's bring up our editor again. So max.c. The max function is pretty simple up here. So let me comment this out and we'll look at how simple it is. So I'm going to just comment out the max function. And instead of doing that if-else block, we can actually put that in one line. We could do a one-line version of an if. And so I can just say return. And then here I'm going to say A greater than B. And if that's true, so this is this test, A greater than B question mark, that's the test. And then if that's true, then give me the value of A. And if it's not true, the else, then give me the value of B. And that's a one-line replacement of if. And that's appropriate in certain circumstances. I don't know if it's the right thing to do here, but it's certainly something that we could do. Now, since we can do it as a one-line function, well, we can actually do that as a macro, right? So let's do it as a macro. This is where things are going to break. So we're going to do a define max. We're going to do max as all uppercase, because whenever you do a macro, just like we were doing parameters and constants, where those really should be all uppercase, you don't have to, but if they're all uppercase, it makes it very clear in your programs that that is a constant or a parameter. And the same thing for a macro. If you use all uppercase, then it's very easy to see as a programmer that that is a macro. And it can help you to avoid some of the side effects that we're about to have right now. So, all right, so let's do our expansion over here. So I like to put everything between parentheses. And that way it protects any kind of evaluations that I might have. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to say if A is greater than B, and there's my question mark, then return the value of A. Otherwise, we'll return the value of B, right? So that's the same thing that I have as my one-line max function up there, right? It's the same. If A is greater than B, then return A. Otherwise, return B. All right, now we just need to go down and use that in our program rather than using the max function. So right here, instead of using max as a function, we'll use max all uppercase, and now we're using max as a macro. And that is the moment that we've broken our program. Let's go ahead and recompile this. So we'll go ahead and save and quit, and we'll run i16gcc to compile it. No errors, no warnings. And we run max. Now, what this should do, remember, is as it counts from 1 to 10, 1 to 5, comparing that with 5, should always give us the value of 5. And then from 6 to 10, it should always be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But that's not what we're going to get. See, so what's happened here is we've totally broken it. The max value is 5 from 1 to 5, and then it skips ahead by 2. Goes 7, 9, and 11. So why did that happen? Okay, so this is where we need to understand what happened. Up where we defined max, let's just go back into the program here real quick. Up where we defined max, we're doing a replacement with the preprocessor macro, and it's replacing text. So wherever we use max all uppercase with 2 arguments, the compiler's replacing it with this expansion right here, actually with the parentheses around it, but it's replacing with that expansion. And so in our code, when we're doing that, well, that's the same thing as writing. Here, I'll comment this out. That's the same thing as writing this. Remember, we're doing it exactly as written in the code, and it's count plus plus greater than value And if that's true, then return count plus plus. Otherwise, return value. And that's where it breaks, right? So as count plus plus is less than the value 5, then it gives us just the return of value. But that breaks when the count gets greater than 5. And now the return is going to be count plus plus. So it's double counting. Count is getting incremented twice. And so that's why the program doesn't work right after 5. So be careful when you're using macros. That's my demo. Since I showed last week how to use macros to optimize a program, I wanted to show how macros can also easily break a program. Now, I'm not saying don't use macros. They can be a great way to optimize a program, but you do need to be careful when using macros so you don't break things. So what'd you think of this video? Did you want to see other programming videos? Let me know in the comments below. Before I go, I wanted to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon. You really do make this channel happen. With your support on Patreon, I'm able to take time off from my consulting practice to keep doing videos and working on the website. Some of you are supporting me at a higher level, and I wanted to say thank you again. I really do appreciate the help, so thanks to everyone. Visit our website at freedos.org, join us on Facebook, follow us on Mastodon, and consider supporting me on Patreon. And don't forget to like and subscribe. That's a small thing, but it really helps the channel. Thank you.